it's kind of that culmination of like, okay, what I build doesn't suck and I'm on to something. And I just now have to figure out how to show that value faster to a customer. But it was really, I mean, we were high-fiving in the office, you know, like she asked me one question. She goes, there's a lot of people that have tried to do what you're doing before, building this next best software. Why you? And that question kind of stumped me. I was like, well, that's tough. And I was like, it immediately kind of came, I was like, well, if somebody had already figured it out, why are you meeting with me? And she by her own admission, she said that that was kind of what hooked her. She's like, okay, like, we'll see what you got. I'll give you a shot.
How did you incorporate the company? You know, did you use a lawyer or did you work with online service like Stripe Atlas?
Didn't use Stripe Atlas. That was kind of it was part of like our venture accelerator, you know, they kind of assisted through that. Admittedly, administrative functions are like, I do not gravitate. I don't wake up in the morning like, I can't wait to check off administrative function. So yeah, I kind of blacked it out of my memory, but yeah, we worked with, Let's
talk about the fun stuff.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about incorporation docs. Listen to your customers. They'll tell you what they want. I think it should be more acutely said, watch your customers. They'll show you what they want. It was not a smart idea to take things at face value. I thought I was discerning, but the best thing to do is watch what people are doing in the field. And then, you know, admittedly, when you're trying to introduce something, especially in an industry like ours, which is more vertical focused, you in many ways turn into somewhat of a business consultant because you're introducing a new system, a new process, you know, that's different than the status quo. Mm-hmm. And so watching your customer is way better than listening to them. How do we decide pricing? Candidly, I'm a little embarrassed to admit it, but.
Welcome everybody to the Startup Growth Podcast. I'm your host, David, founder and CEO of Fondo, and we are here with our very special guest, Stephen Llevano, founder and CEO of Capabild. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. So would love to jump in sort of your origin story. Where did you start and when did you realize that you wanted to be a founder?
My story is a little different. So my family background, my dad started a company at college with his best friends out of Berkeley. And I saw all the trials and tribulations of being a startup, you know, executive and founder, and like the highs and lows, the companies his friends went to that, you know, weren't, you know, the ones he decided not to go to that were glowing successes. So I think at first coming out of school, I wanted a very traditional path. I wanted private equity, real estate, banking, you know, you work hard, you make money. That's how you want to do it. And for about a decade, I kind of went along and yeah, I was, you know, working for myself in some degree, but it's very traditional, very, you know, structured. And the more I just kept fighting against that structure. So I always like jokingly sound like a very reluctant entrepreneur. So, you know, I was like, got to my early 30s and I was like, man, I don't want to leave this earth without ever saying I gave it a shot. And so, yeah, I started looking around for a business that I wanted to start.
Nice. And so once you decided you wanted to start a company, how did you come up with different ideas and ultimately come up with Capabild?
Yeah. So I think the heuristic I used was really a market that was large. There was competition, but I felt it was under innovated. But the highest one I anchored on was it a customer I could connect with? Cause at the end of the day, you know, it's like being a founder is hard. And so if you don't connect with your customer, care about them, it makes it really difficult to like want to work late and answer that customer support ticket at 6 p.m. on a Sunday. And you're like, ugh, you know, I just wanted to hang out. So if I didn't understand kind of like what this customer is going through, I wasn't going to do it. So, that led me to, so I had a friend who was, you know, running a venture accelerator and they had a bunch of ideas earmarked. And so kind of going through it, I was like, wait, I've already thought about, you know, running this business, which I guess I haven't discussed yet, but you know, so we do, compliance management software for insurance contractors. So it's a really sexy, you know, industry that everyone thinks about. But really what it comes down to is if there's a leak in your house, if there's a fire, if there's a, you know, natural disasters, the ones that gain the headlines, but all of that, we help them with their infield documentation and then have, you know, using like AI now and a lot of other software tooling, allow them to create an estimate, within 24 hours. And so, it may not seem that robust, but it's a pretty difficult feat to kind of tackle that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, getting back to it, like I I met, this buddy, and he was like, "Hey, you think you'd be a great founder? We've got these ideas." And I was like, "Oh, I've always thought about this," because I was a customer of restoration, jobs. And so, these restoration contractors would come in, on these construction sites that they were built, or, and a customer of ours would be occupying an office space, and they would, there'd be a flood. And I was like, well, pipe burst or something. It's like, why can't you just mop this up and keep going? There's an immense amount of insurance compliance associated with it. And so, yeah, I kind of fell in love with it. I started calling around, and I called and flew out, and I met with like half a dozen contractors all across the country, called hundreds more, and they all had this issue of like, I don't know what the field crews are doing, and that makes writing an estimate miserably difficult.
And so what was the first version of this idea when you launched?
The first version was, there's like every kind of vertical software, there's a multi-billion-dollar, incumbent that is by all intents and purposes a monopoly or duopoly. And our first intent was, it's going to be so easy. Give me like 18 months. We're going to build a better product. And then as time went on, we really started to realize the biggest issue was proverbially the left hand's not talking to the right. And so if we can make it easy for the field crews to collect data, they can then present it back to their administrative staff, who can compile it, submit it to carriers, submit it for payment. And so that was we started out with like, okay, we'll basically just be a pictures app. And our big innovation was, using LiDAR to capture spatial measurements just from your mobile device.
And how did you get your first customer?
It was through a personal relationship. The guy I used to work with served on like a charity board. He's younger than me, so he was in his early 20s at the time, and he served on a charity board with a restoration owner about a mile from here. And she agreed to meet with me. She asked me one question. She goes, "There's a lot of people that have tried to do what you're doing before, building this next best software. Why you?" And that question kind of stumped me. I was like, well, that's tough. And I was like, it immediately kind of came. I was like, well, if somebody had already figured it out, why are you meeting with me? And she by her own admission, she said that that was kind of what hooked her. She's like, okay, like, we'll see what you got. I'll give you a shot. And so, her name's Jacqueline Carpenter, and from Ideal Restoration. And they've been one of our best, longest term clients. So,
wow.
Yeah.
And how did you think about pricing when you first, were coming out of the gate? So you're working, as a commercial broker. You have a lot of clients that are facing restoration challenges. You see this pain point. You start considering, doing your own company. You're doing an accelerator. You decide this is the space, this is the market I want to go after. Did you take funding first? Did you try to get customers first? Once you decided that this is the idea, what did you do next?
Yeah. So part of that accelerator program was they pair you with an investor. We had a great investor. They liked me. They liked the idea, and they gave us, $1 million safe. And so we were off and running. We built the first version of the product on that with a small team. And, how do we decide pricing? I candidly, I'm a little embarrassed to admit it, but I watched, or I read Alex Hormozy's like pricing book or whatever. And it was just like, be better, price higher. I was like, okay, well, that's our strategy. And so we priced what we felt was, if we convinced customers, we already thought it was an uphill battle to convince customers to move to something new. I mean, they're construction companies at the end of the day. They're very stuck in their ways. They like their structures. Candidly, if the day ain't broke, don't fix it. So, we thought if we can convince them, we'll convince them because we're a higher premium product. By the way, this was totally wrong. This is totally wrong. We had some people that bet on us, and forever grateful that they did. And we found a better pricing structure eventually, but we priced it like, we're going to price higher. We're going to just build like crazy amount. This industry is very usage based from a software revenue model. And we're like, we'll just charge $1,000 a month. You get everything. They didn't like that. Yeah. Most people didn't like it. So we learned that a better pricing model was kind of like, for lack of a better term, like a Costco membership where you pay your, kind of annual recurring or monthly recurring. And then we still try to add that same amount of value. So, in that transition from $1,000 a month to our entry price is, 300, we package a bunch of stuff. We kept that same $1,000 product and bumped it down, but then we started adding in a lot of like pay as you go, like additional services that not everybody needed. And that kind of helped to fill the gaps. But yeah, it was an education curve, to say the least.
Yeah. And so in those first customer conversations, what were the biggest learnings from, launching Capabuild as an all-in-one solution to, $1,000 a month, talking to a few customers, potential customers? What were the biggest learnings and what did you change?
I think I fundamentally disagree with the listen to your customers, they'll tell you what they want. I think it should be more acutely said, watch your customers, they'll show you what they want. Because like anything, I ask you what's your biggest problem, you're probably going to say something that happened in the last 7 days or the last month or something. But that may not be the biggest problem in your business, or that the biggest problem you'd be willing to throw a lot of money at. And that's across any, industry. So I think watching your customer, getting out and seeing them in real time versus asking them to, unless you're exceptional at diagnosing what a business needs. In this instance, we were novices. We were coming into an industry that I had no idea about. And so, it was not a smart idea to take things at face value. I thought I was discerning, but the best thing to do is watch what people are doing in the field. And then, admittedly, when you're trying to introduce something, especially in an industry like ours, which is more vertical focused, you in many ways turn into somewhat of a business consultant because you're introducing a new system, a new process, that's different than the status quo. And so watching your customer is way better than listening to them.
And how do you recommend people figure out how to get that opportunity to watch a customer, right? Because I bet you couldn't, you didn't just show up, right? How did you convince people to open the door?
A lot of them, these guys, an overlooked industry. It's a $500 billion a year industry in terms of dollars that flow through a contractor that focuses explicitly on insurance work. And people don't really, I remember there's a company I called in Denver, and they're still not a client, but I was like, I got a meeting in Denver. You're gonna because they answered my emails, and I was going back and forth, and I was like, actually, funny enough, I have a meeting out there. Would you mind if I stop by? They're like, you want to come to? So my wife jokes, she's like, oh, should I come on some of these work trips with you? I'm going to industrial parks, an hour outside of any major city. And so it's not the most glamorous, place, but that's where a lot of people run their businesses and provide a lot of employment. So for me, I was lucky that it's easy to go watch your customer. Now, and we're a very field-based tool. So you need to watch them on a job site for, a different technology platform. You can watch YouTube videos, Reddit, comment boards, there's different personas, but it's watching their behaviors as opposed to talking to them and saying what's a better way you'd like to see a CRM? You're probably not going to get as good of an answer as you would just watching. How do you sell? What do you track?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And so now, you've gotten your customers, you've gotten your funding. What is Capabuild today?
Yeah, so we've kind of really positioned the business to be documentation focused. So we believe that if we can capture the biggest issue people have in producing invoiceable estimates, basically, this is what I'm owed, this is what I did, and it's justified because, it used to be back in the day a handshake and because I said it. Now, with how much data it's and ease of data collection, now it's about not just what you're presenting, but how and in what structure. So what we try to do is allow the contractor to just collect data no matter how they want to, and then we organize it for them on their behalf. Obviously, AI has been a huge, unlock for us of just auto categorization and just capturing raw data. And so what we try to do is really simplify ostensibly what is a very complex workflow. It's kind of like performing medical services in a property, because it's not just enough to we're going to remodel this kitchen now that it had a fire. Insurance carriers don't pay for that. It's supposed to go back to exactly the way it was done. And the same way in a hospital, you need to know how many, doses of Advil, how many Band-Aids, how many juice cups did you get? They track everything. But you're doing the same thing, but the difference between a hospital and a damaged home is a hospital is an immensely more controlled environment, and an administrator sitting right outside of the room where you're getting a technician who is exceptional with their hands, but may or may not have a GED.
Mm-hmm.
So,
wow. So they have to document the before, what they need to do, estimate, then what they actually do, and package it all up and submit it to insurance, and then insurance pays them.
Pretty much. Yeah. So you're doing all that while standing in a home, someone's pissed off at you. You're standing in 2 feet of water, maybe poop if the septic tank broke, and you've got to document this work strategically and surgically to understand what's being collected. So we try to make that easy, and then we were able to parse all that information and write an estimate for them in like an insurance compliant manner.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and what has been your biggest surprise in building this company? Whether it's through fundraising or how to acquire customers, what has been the biggest surprise?
I'm way dumber than I thought I was. It's not a, like in any market, it takes way longer. It's like not even double it, not triple it. Cause as a founder, it's like, I've heard someone say it's kind of like dog years. It's like, I've been running this thing for almost 4 years now, but, you go through that arc of like, oh my gosh, this is so easy. I'm going to be $1 billion company in 5 years. I will bet anything on it. And then you get hit in the face the first time. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing, and then it's just perpetual highs and lows. And so I think the hardest learning was, even if intellectually you know how long it's going to take, getting a true emotional understanding for like how long it's going to take, and then trying to like psychologically manage yourself through that process. Even I've talked about it, but it's like, wake up at 2 a.m. You're thinking about something. You're always thinking about this business. And so how do you build that sustainability? It's not even work-life balance. Like, how do you run the marathon and not just try to sprint a marathon, so to speak?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It always takes a lot longer than anyone thinks or expects. What's an example or a customer story that really sticks out to you when Capabuild really helped one of your users?
I think the greatest thing we can, I think the best piece of advice I always try to give other founders is like, when they're trying to figure out a business, is pick something you do for free anyways. And I love helping business owners, like just think about like somewhat to a fault. And probably, my investors got to see like how much time I spent helping other restoration, businesses and thinking about how they should build their business. They probably like, Stephen, maybe spend a little less time doing that. But, so we had a customer that, admittedly was the product was kind of thrust on them through a national, partner. And they were like, hey, you got to use this or else. And they were like, nah, pass. I'm not doing it. And so for months they were just like, I'm not paying for this. And we're like, all right, I'm not going to bully them into, spending $300 a month with us. But then, they started seeing problems with their other softwares, and they're like, and the partner was like, okay, you're paying for this now, whether you use it or not. And we're like, okay, fine, we'll give it a shot because other things aren't working. And then they said, if you commit to using it for a day, it was this huge unlock. And they went through this litany of things like, it does this. And like, we don't have to do this anymore. We save this manual step and that manual step. And it's so cool. And that was 2.5 years, 3 years into the business, a little over a year ago. And it's kind of that culmination of like, okay, what I build doesn't suck, and I'm onto something, and I just now have to figure out how to show that value faster to a customer. But it was really, we were high-fiving in the office, like, hey, this is awesome.
Amazing. And going back to sort of starting the company and the founder journey, there's a bunch of stuff that, in addition to building the product and getting customers, that you end up doing. So how did you decide across that founder journey of, how did you incorporate the company? Did you use a lawyer, or did you work with a online service like Stripe Atlas?
Didn't use Stripe Atlas. That was it was part of like our venture accelerator, they kind of assisted through that. Admittedly, administrative functions are like the bane of my existence. It's just like, I do not gravitate. I don't wake up in the morning like, I can't wait to check off administrative functions. So yeah, I kind of blacked it out in my memory, but yeah, we worked with, we worked
Let's
with,
talk about the fun stuff.
yeah. I don't want to talk about incorporation docs. Yeah, we use a lawyer. A lot of this stuff, and to the credit of the accelerator we went through, is that this was kind of like, do this. This is the playbook.
Yeah.
You have to do this. They held us accountable, and, it did expedite. I was stressed out because, I was like, all this paperwork I don't want to do.
Yeah.
But so we went through a lawyer, we incorporated in Delaware. We got a bookkeeper, that was kind of like, hey, this is your bookkeeper. It's like, okay. It's kind of like an arranged marriage.
Yep.
And so, yeah, they kind of took on a lot of the administrative functions that admittedly I didn't really appreciate how much it drains a business in terms of time and focus until things didn't really start operating that well. So,
Yeah. And so once you got that running, like, how did you decide, like, okay, this is the bank I'm going to use. This is the payroll I'm going to use. Like, how did you set all those things up?
Initially, what were my buddies doing?
Mm-hmm.
What were my other, like, oh, you're using Brex? Okay, we're using Brex.
Mm-hmm.
I think we used SVB at first because that was like, where our investor told us that's where you should probably wire the money. Like, okay, well, you're giving me the money. That's where I'm putting it.
Mm-hmm.
But then, yeah, as you start to operate, you start to realize, like, okay, I don't really like this experience. I don't like how they operate that way. I'm thinking about this too much when this should just be, a set it and forget it type experience. And I only address it when there's like critical, taxes or, others that kind of come up.
Yep. And so, okay, so you incorporated with your lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
You're on SVB,
Mm-hmm.
or you started out on SVB.
RIP, well, kind of.
RIP. Yeah. What happened when that went down?
Well, first of all, I was at lunch with you.
Yeah.
I think I still have the selfie of us. And you're like, you know what? If we survive, great. If we don't, this will be a nice little memory for when we have new jobs. But I don't think the whole world didn't know what was going on at that point. But especially in San Francisco. Yeah, I mean, we started, at least I say it was really largely me. It was an ease of use, like, that I was continuing to source, right? So we switched from SVB to Brex because their interface was just more effective. And, they did everything we needed and they did everything pretty well. Like, for me, my founder accounting, let alone, kind of the excellent bookkeeper we have with Fondo is how much money did we make and what is our nets this month? And is our net burn until we're profitable? Is it going down or is there a reason it changed accordingly?
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Like, I don't think about much more because it's all about getting new customers and then finding ways to monetize those relationships for us a lot more than, oh, what did we spend on G&A and S&M this month? We're just not at that phase yet.
Yep. And then how did you decide on your payroll?
Again, I heard of Gusto. I used Gusto. I heard Rippling at the time when we incorporated in 2022 that's for big boy. That's for, kind of the Series B plus company.
Yep.
So okay, well, I'm too small. There's another company we were looking at, I think called JustWorks, but, I just didn't find that interface as easy to use. And I had familiarity with Gusto. That was at my prior company. That was the platform they used. And so it was just easy. I understood it. And, a lot of other companies were using it. So,
and then how about for your cap table?
Carta, same thing.
Yep.
It didn't, everyone else is. It's just like the thing your parents tell you not to do as a kid. It's like, why do you do it? Everybody else is doing it. It's like the entire decision we made around our software.
And then for your accounting and tax, how were you handling that?
Yeah, so we had a bookkeeper at first. They were a little more traditional. Everything was done Excel based, box folder, emails, and and we just I didn't think it was a culture fit. I think I was probably not the easiest to work with because I was like, they were asking very, granular, elemental, pieces. And I was just like, I don't have the answer to this. Is this critical for me to, we can't close your monthly books unless we know this. And I was like, well, there's a bunch of other startups. How do you not have the W-9 for fill in the blank vendor? Things that were just, so again, back to that ease of use, it just was not easy for me to use their service. And they do, well, I work with a lot of companies, but yeah. And then, from that, we've decided to transition to a new vendor, which was, you guys. And a lot of that was because, first of all, we knew each other through San Francisco, shared in like an office building. And so part of that was, okay, I liked you. That's easy. And he showed me what it did. I was like, well, this feels a lot easier. And there was a software component to it. So yeah, that was kind of the initiation of the change, was like the ease of use was just not difficult, or it was too difficult with what we were doing. And then it was totally assured when we transitioned. I was like, wait, we're done? Like, yeah. It's like, it was so much harder for me as a new company with only money and no expenses to transition to something else, or to start something, than it is to move an entire functioning company with, W-2s in multiple states. And there's a lot of more complexity to it. You guys are like, yeah, it's a couple of days.
Awesome.
What? So, yeah.
Well, thank you for being on Fondo, of course. And so what are you excited about for the future of the industry and what you're building at Capabuild?
I think the interesting piece is there's really like a growth in the industry right now. Traditionally, a lot of the, for the last 5 years, it's really been shifting in a different direction. But prior to that, insurance carriers were pretty much the lead source. So these contractors were making 80, sometimes 80 and most times between 50 and 80% margins on their projects, waiting for the insurance carrier to pick up the phone. They'd show up, they'd do their work, they'd take pictures, they'd document it, and they'd get paid. I mean, I'm oversimplifying like a very complex workflow, and it truly is a trade craft that they've cultivated. But they had one major element that a lot of businesses across the United States don't have covered, which is they were beneficiaries of, if you do your job well, you will get more and more revenue and grow just because you're doing your job well. So much of running a business is not just, do you do your job well? There's a lot of companies that don't do their job very well, but they're excellent at distributing their services, their source, their product, whatever. And so now what we're seeing is insurance deductibles are going a lot higher on properties. And so that means people are filing less claims. And so what's shifting is the contractor now has to go out and service their own work and find it. And so, we're excited about assisting contractors operationally to ease in those workflows so they can like really go out and hunt for their own revenue.
Mm-hmm. And what's something about the industry that you've learned that you wish you learned sooner?
Don't call your insurance company when you have a property damage. You should, at the very least, do a Google search and find the company in your area with the most 5-star reviews. Get them out to look at it before your carrier. Carriers, their main focus is servicing customers as fast as possible and getting to somewhere where they're happy. The problem is most homeowners, policyholders, whatever, don't know what good is. You've never had a property damage. Most people will have 1 or 2 of those in their entire life, although 1 in 20 Americans will have a property damage every single year. So yeah, it's funny. I've kind of become the de facto, like, hey, a pipe burst in my house, buddy. Like, Steve, what do I do? So yeah, Google search a contractor in your area and get them to come out and give you a bid before you go to your carrier, or, at the same time you go to your carrier and say, hey, Jake from State Farm, my house is flooded. And they're like, oh, don't worry, I'll send somebody out.
And, okay, what's the hardest truth about running your business?
It takes a lot longer than you think to, really, if you're building for a long-term, high-value business, it takes a lot longer than you can think. There's a lot of ways you can kind of hack your way to certain VC-based metrics, but if you're building for long-term value, and I'm not even there yet, the longer you go, start to feel it. It takes a lot longer than you think. And definitely, I'm learning it more so in the last years, taking time to sit back and like really think about the business than just squashing bugs, customer requests, like little administrative things, because those aren't what move the needle in a business.
So how can everyone get involved in your mission at Capabuild, and where can we find you?
Oh man. LinkedIn's probably my best platform. I'm I have to admit there's not many Twitter followers in the restoration space. I'm typically crawling for customers in Facebook groups, which if you're selling to the trades businesses, don't listen to competitors, but like the Facebook groups are unheralded, Facebook groups are back. I know they were big for when you and I were in college, but they're back. But yeah, like kind of what's the mission? I think it's, I really do believe, not to get too like meta and political, but I think that like there's definitely a growing wealth disparity, and the more people can be owners in businesses and support owners of businesses, not these, monolithic megacorps, it starts to kind of reemerge that middle class. I think like, at a more high level, it's like trying to help those local service businesses and not, doing the, taking that time to do 5 minutes of extra research on something, to like work with somebody who actually cares about what's going on in your home or, your car or whatever. Cause those people are out there, and they may not be through a VC based marketplace app, but, Google's got a pretty good, so like help your local service business, I think is kind of the answer.
Love it. Awesome, Stephen. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
That was awesome. I appreciate it.